So I believe, Mara, that covers the job description and the requirements for this new leadership role. Is there anything else you wanted to cover in this intake strategy session that you set up with me?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to talk to you about the interview process so that we
Great.
can work through that ahead of time so that we can really maximize how we go about recruiting for your role and make it as most efficient as possible for you. So I do
Perfect.
have a couple ideas that I would like to run by you. And these are proven tactics, and some of your coworkers are actually working this way already. So we've already proven that in order to streamline everything, that we were able to put this together. So in this role, it is a leadership role. So I do believe that we should limit the sessions, the interview sessions, to 4 to 5 max. Are you comfortable with that?
4 to 5. So you're talking, is that you? Does that include you? Is that me? Is
No,
that
no, this would be after me. So we want to limit it to no more than 5 interview sessions for the individual. And typically those sessions
but
would be 45 minutes to an hour, hopefully,
okay.
to really respect the candidate's time.
And those are all individual, right? Because I know the people that I'm thinking of are going to want to meet this person separately.
I'm sorry, can you explain that again? What do you mean by that?
Meaning
Individual
it's
and
not a
separately?
panel discussion that like three of these people are going to sit together, right? It's all
No,
individual.
no, I'm saying
Okay.
4 to 5 different individual
Okay.
sessions, and you can add couples in there, like you can have partner up different
Okay.
leaders if you wish to interview.
So
But what we don't want to do is drag out the process to several weeks and have 6, 7, 8 sessions, if at
so
all
when is the
possible.
assessment happening? Because Jill, do we not have a corporate culture personality assessment that has to go through this for our leadership principles?
Yeah, because it's a leadership role, Joe and Mara, we'll definitely want to go through the assessment. I guess we can discuss right now what step in the process does that make sense for us and how are we going to facilitate that process?
And then are we taking them to dinner, right? I mean, because we need to meet these people and be able to, understand their mannerisms, how they're going to they will interface with clients. So how is that going to work?
Well, we can certainly arrange a dinner if you feel this is a final candidate. I'm not quite sure that we should set up a series of interviews and an assessment and a dinner for each individual. I mean, I'm sure we can do that, but I'm thinking about you as your business. What's best for your business? Because your job really is going to rely on you being there for the business, not necessarily spending excessive time in interviews.
Right. Well, I mean, I need this person now. So, I mean, have you started sourcing and getting candidates into this yet? Because, we're behind the eight ball already.
Right. Well, I just had this role handed to me today, which is why I set up this intake with you immediately. So once we finish this and we really agree on the process and what I'll deliver and what I hope to expect from you, I will get on it immediately, and meaning starting today. So
All
let's
right. Well,
walk through some of this and try to work through this, because the more we figure out up front, the easier the flow, the better the process will be for you and the candidate. And that's really ultimately what we want.
but Jill,
You
does
know,
this really align to our HR principles and the culture and the
well, I
behaviorals that we
guess
have?
I guess one thing that I'm hearing that I'm a little concerned about is your timeline, Joe, in conjunction with the number of steps. So, Mara, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you are correct. And I think that we should lean on best practices in this case and really try to focus on the minimal amount of steps for maximum quality. And so once I'm finished with my screening, we might want to consider moving over to the HR assessment just to determine a
So
cultural
what
fit.
I'm hearing is it's not all defined here, and HR and TA are kind of, coming at a couple different angles. So maybe we can come back with a strategy here and propose something.
I
Sounds like a
agree.
great plan. Sounds like a
Yeah.
great plan. Looking forward to seeing you again, Joe.
Yeah, let's reconnect tomorrow. Does that sound good for everyone?
Perfect.
Perfect.
Welcome to the Talent Revolution, Tales from the Trenches. I'm pleased to announce today's guest, Mara McElroy. Mara is a talent acquisition consultant who Joe and I have both had the pleasure of working directly with, and she is one of the best and brightest in her field. We're delighted to have her with us today, and I'd like to give her an opportunity to share a little bit of her background before we dig in today's into today's topic, which is how do you really build a efficient talent acquisition process? Mara?
Well, thank you so much for that warm introduction. I really appreciate it. I too feel the same. I just want to throw that out there. Both of you have been incredible to meet and work with, and I'm very honored to be here. So thank you so much. So for the last several years, or last few years, I should say, I've been more in a consulting role, which I've been thoroughly enjoying, where I'm able to walk into different organizations and just really step in and help define new processes to really maximize their talent acquisition. And it's been a roller coaster. It's been a great experience, and I've learned a lot myself, which I'm always happy to do and learn. And I've moved through nonprofit, technology, software, still focusing on the technical aspect, but also a lot of corporate roles as well, and executive searches. So I'm very happy to be here and share some of these great ideas. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, welcome, Mara. It's always great to chat and see you.
Yes.
And Jill, this has been fun. And as everyone's seen, we did a little scenario here, and it kind of leads exactly into the topic. And this is my first comment for both of you guys is, where do you think and why is the TA process is it broken, or how do we break it down? Because we can kind of see that there was a misconception on what the manager was looking at, maybe the practices that go on, TAs trying to push into that in our scenario. Being a consultant and working through these different things and the whole career you've had, Mara, why do you think there was that breakdown?
I think in general, there's a lot of noise and a lot of information out there. And I think people look at talent acquisition so much in like an outside in sort of process, where they look at what Facebook does, or they look what XYZ company does, and they try to bring in all these different ideas and stack their process. And it makes things very complicated. And so what it really does is it prolongs the process and it lengthens the process. In addition to that, I think that TA sometimes doesn't have the confidence to really drive the process. And when you don't have a TA-led recruiting process, everything breaks down. And that's a little bit of an example of what we shared earlier, where the TA has to be able to drive it, and they have to have the confidence to do that, number one, as an individual. But also, I think it's really important to have leaders such as Jill and executives of the organization saying, hey, we trust this person. We hired her. We brought her in to try to help us get better at this. So please follow along and try to do what this individual asks. Unless that fails, then we'll try something else. But at least give this a chance of trying something new and different. And I do believe that has to come from the top. And I've worked in a few different organizations where it really didn't come from the top until you had to go over and kind of rat on people a little bit. And personally, I think that's a backwards way. So definitely top-down leadership and executive buy-in is super important.
Yeah, I would just say from my side, kind of having been an HR practitioner for many years, I really feel like that partnership between HR and TA needs to be very strong. Yes. And the HR professional's role is really to advocate to the leaders and the business side of the organization that TA is running the ship, right? This is their craft. This is their area of expertise. And we need to trust and let them steer this process.
Yes. Yes.
And I know there's sometimes pushback, and certain leaders have, hang on to old legacy ideas and other things. But I know from my side, I always encourage to say, let's give this a try, and maybe you'll be surprised, and maybe you'll get the outcomes you want. So I would just say, I feel like that's a really important role that HR plays in the process, rather than saying, well, just do what the business leader wants, right? Number one, there's, in addition to this efficiency we're talking about and getting to outcomes, the other reason for that really becomes the experience, which we've actually dedicated an episode to the candidate experience, and wanting to have that repeatable, consistent feedback, right? And feeling throughout the whole company. So if you had every leader driving TA to do what they want, then it's impossible to achieve that.
Absolutely. And I always say, and sometimes this does help when you're working with different leaders, everything we do is advertising. in recruiting more than anything else other than sales and marketing. So everything we do, every touch we have with candidates and what our process looks like, that's advertising for us. And when it's broken, everyone hears about it. When it works really well, it benefits us. So we have to be very mindful and careful about how we do that. And I do think also that, you only know what you know. You don't know what you don't know. And sometimes these executives or even hiring managers haven't had anyone actually give them the statistics and the data on what a recruiter-led process is. And if you're not comfortable doing that, especially as a leader such as ourselves, we may want to, look at a different profession, because I wouldn't expect to tell a software development manager how to write code. He shouldn't expect to tell me how to recruit efficiently to maximize our results. So that's something we need to find our way to speak about very respectfully and get that point across at every turn. And then of course we have to deliver on what we say, because the moment we do not deliver on our quote promises, then it all breaks down. So confidence is key.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, the confidence leads to that credibility and that trust that's so important in the process.
Yes,
but if we kind of dig in, can you talk about maybe common pain points or kind of bottlenecks and things that you've seen that maybe are red flags that, other listeners in this space can look for?
Yes. I mean, I think some of the most common, I'll just run by them, but I think we all have them, is really not having a true sense of what the job description is. And you're spinning your wheels and you're putting a lot of time and effort into the activity, only to find out that this 3 to 5 year requirement, really, this hiring manager wants an entry level person that's a recent grad. So really understanding the requirements, I think, is key. It sounds so simplistic, but it happens all the time. It happens all the time. So you really have to, the intake is super important for any position. So Joe, like in our little scenario, why would I go off recruiting for you when I really didn't have a strong sense of what you're looking for? It would have just, burned candidates, wasted time, took time away from other things. Another big bottleneck is not really agreeing to the SLAs. And most importantly, as a recruiter, I need to be able to explain how I'm going to deliver and when I'm going to deliver. And I need to ask my hiring managers, when I do that, what can I expect from you? Will you give me your guarantee that you will try your hardest to get back to me within 24 to 48 hours for each activity? When I submit a candidate, can you give me that feedback? When I have an interview, can you give me feedback within 24 hours? And that removes bottlenecks from scheduling, removes bottlenecks from time to fill. We're not waiting 2 weeks for an answer on a resume when we could have had that, 13 days ago. So that's definitely a big bottleneck. And also scheduling. I don't know how many times we've all heard, oh, I know I really need this person, but I just don't have time. I just don't have time to interview. That has to be definitely, I always say, confirm it in writing at the intake, get sign off that you are going to get time allocated on your calendar. You will schedule block times potentially where Mara can just, if you have confidence in Mara, just go ahead and put the candidates on your calendar. So, because that's a huge bottleneck. If you look at the metrics and the data in an ATS from a submittal to when you trigger the hiring manager interested and then an interview takes place, there's a big gap of time. So I consider that a huge bottleneck.
Yeah, just to reinforce what I'm hearing, it sounds like this alignment up front on expectations and feedback and other things have to be a huge part of that conversation up front with the leader, saying, do I have your buy-in? These are my expectations. These are the guidelines we need to follow in order to hit your dates. Is that a fair?
Absolutely. Right. And of course, we should be mindful of how we present that, of course. Like, it's not like you must do this for me. It's more, wow, I have this information. This is what you're looking for. You said this is urgent. So let's follow a timeline that mirrors urgency. So if I present someone and, tomorrow, would you be able to give me feedback by Monday morning? And just really walk through that. And, and it builds confidence, but, on our end as well as talent acquisition, because we're 50% of the fault of bottlenecks as well. We need to be able to commit to realistic timelines of when we're going to present and deliver candidates as well.
Right.
It always goes back to the intake. I mean, there's so much that needs to be established at that point, and companies who really are not enforcing intakes for every kickoff, I think they're missing out on some good opportunity to build that relationship and build and strengthen the process.
So in doing that, though, right? I mean, you set it up and you say it, and they're all ready to go and gung ho, and absolutely, Mara, I'll give you that feedback right away. And then it doesn't happen, and then it doesn't happen, and then this doesn't happen, right? And they don't share it on LinkedIn like they're supposed to, or they don't give you feedback, or they miss an interview. So how do you come back at them, right? You're designing this process, and then they're failing on their side. How do you hold them accountable back to it?
Well, I think it's important, again, during the intake and then throughout the process, if you need to reiterate, is to make sure they understand that in a very respectful way, you are not my only customer. I am one TA representative, and I'm currently juggling 25 different roles, from corporate to technology and everything in between. So please understand that this is for everyone, not just for you. This is so that our business can keep moving, that we can get better and better and better and hire the best people. So when I'm asking you to follow through with your commitment, it's not because I expect you to do something for me. It's really for the good of the business, and most likely for you. And then if they don't do that, you say, hey, remember that conversation we had where we committed that if I delivered a candidate by X time, you would get back to me by X time? That didn't happen this time. So when can I get feedback on this candidate? Well, I got to get to that. No, let's sit down right now. Let's hop on Teams. Let's view the resume together, and you tell me what we're missing or what we need to do to push this candidate through.
Yeah, this is another area where I think your HR business partner or HR liaison, whatever their title is, could be your ally, right? And saying,
yes,
you maybe see these people every day, you're in meetings with them. How can you assist in making sure that we hit this date by,
yes,
helping with that follow-up and encouraging them, or,
yes,
kind of giving them a nudge. So
absolutely. And I try not to escalate it until I really need to. But that would be my escalation point, is the HR business partner or potentially the director or VP of HR.
Right.
Or if there is a TA person above me, probably that person as well. But I love that you mentioned the HR business partner, because I just have such a growing love of that role, because the HR business partner, they treat their customers like, as far as wanting to deliver what's best for them, the same as we do in talent acquisition. So you're right. I mean, that would probably be, a great escalation point as well. And again, I wouldn't want to escalate, and I don't encourage people to escalate until you really tried everything you could first.
Because you've got to push back and own it. And
yes, because you want to strengthen your relationship with all of your hiring managers and candidates on every touch. And, moving too quickly on escalating is probably going to not strengthen your relationship.
Yeah, you need the HR business partner to be subtle and
yes,
not obvious, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But that's where you keep them in touch, right? So if you got your process and you're going along, you have to, TA has ownership to share that information across, as well as the HR business partners to be able to pull it from them. You need to keep communicating both ways, and then they can help shepherd. Oh, I heard that you got interviews, or I heard that there's, there's ways to poke to ensure that it's a teamwork going forward, and it's not us and them in that sense, right? And that's why, the whole premise of a lot of things that we talked about, Jill, in this whole podcast is bringing those two together. And it doesn't matter if it's a big company or small, right? Yeah. Everyone has another partner, whatever level it is, that they can help and share that information. And I just encourage that communication. And again, sometimes it's just good information to have, because those conversations happen as they walk by them, or they're on a message, or at the end of a meeting.
Yes, absolutely.
The way I look at it is that we're all really helping this leader hit their target. So, even if it seems like maybe we're riding them or kind of nudging them or whatever, it's really all for them. It's all for their team and them,
and the business.
And
we're all here to drive the business forward, right? Absolutely. Solve the problems, and achieve those goals. And
Yes.
that's what they all have to understand.
And
So,
some do like to schedule like weekly meetings to follow up and see where we are. I always accept that. I love that. If there's certain leaders, like I recently worked with a VP that it didn't matter if we were close to an offer or anything. We met every morning. It's every Monday morning at 7:30 to discuss wins and losses. Like, what did we really like? What didn't we like? How could we have done this better? And that's fantastic. So if you can encourage that, that's another way to help keep things on track and keep things moving, because that meeting's coming up and everyone's accountable for their delivery.
right.
So it's
I want to sidestep a little bit, guys, and we've talked a lot about it sounds like the intake and the interview process side of things and feedback, but let's talk about the whole TA process, right? What other bottlenecks, breakdowns do you guys see in the whole TA? So think of the whole hiring, from whether it's workforce planning and understanding through onboarding and orientation. Is there other breakdowns, watchouts that you guys have seen in, I guess Mara, go first on it, in your experience?
Yes. I think there's many, because I don't know if any of us would have a job in talent acquisition if it was perfect. So there's lots of breakdowns. And I always want to preface this with saying we're human beings, and with human beings, there are always ebbs and flows and different personalities and mindsets. So we always have to accept that. But I think an area that is really important is everyone needs to be on the same page in the process. So if you're going to include, like, let's just say you're a CIO who's interviewing some sort of consultant or technologist that's going to support the finance team, for instance, finance should be brought in to those intakes. Finance should be brought in early so that everyone is on the same page. Sometimes I see lack of communication between different departments that are involved in the same hire, and that could definitely lose time. And so that's a bottleneck and a breakdown. So that's one example that we didn't talk about that I have experienced recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could be kind of looking for not quite the right fit for both teams, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I have seen a few other breakdowns where people, especially executives, weren't aware that they were to be included in the interview process. Mm-hmm. And sometimes chasing that person down and not getting that commitment up front, it's a big bottleneck. Like, let's just say you want the chief marketing officer to interview your demand gen people, and he's not even aware of that yet. So you go through this process, and we're fast tracking this great candidate. Oh, he's in Chile for 3 weeks or something like that. So having a lot of, exactly what's going to happen up front on some of those things. But some people we don't think about that all the time. I mean, I don't think about it all the time. Like, who else is involved beyond the regular interview panel? So
it sounds like this kind of like the conversation about, are there any other key stakeholders in this process that we should be talking about, right?
Yes.
So that's
So one I want to bring up is, I think we do all a fantastic job. We get everybody aligned. We got the candidate in place, and then they've accepted the offer. And then you're going through whatever process you have for onboarding of background checks and drug screens, and that wasn't processed right, or no, we don't have the documentation there yet, and wait a minute, we need this person to start next week. How do we get to that piece? And then the manager's not here that day when they're starting. So I'm like, take that whole big holistic approach, guys, of there's other pieces, and that's something that we do all this stuff, and then that gets forgotten because we can't onboard them the right timely manner. That is what's expected.
No, I completely agree. And when I think about what's a good process that's simple, smart, and scalable, I'd say probably my second or third point would be exactly that. Like, make sure that all tasks are assigned at the right point in time so that everyone knows what everyone's role is in the entire process, from opening a rec to designing the interview rubric or structured interview forms, all the way through to who's doing the background checks, and every step should be defined. It should be very well defined, and there should be checks and balances to make sure that they work properly. But also, once you do that, you should try to contain it as much as you can to one person. For instance, talent acquisition should be, opening a rec and doing an intake, posting the role, regrouping, retooling, whatever we need to do, all the way through to presenting that offer and getting the final offer letter, and possibly even, assigning a background check, depending on the size of the company. And then when you do that, you should empower each step, empower each person to have the autonomy and the ability to actually perform their function without extra approvals. Hey, Jill, I'm going to make this offer. Do you approve? All of that should already be approved so that everything is flowing nicely through the process. I think that's really important. And there's definitely a lot of, here, Mara, go ahead and recruit for this role. Oh, but before you do that, you have to talk to this person. Before you do that, you have to talk to this person. Before you make even a verbal offer, you have to talk to this person and get it approved by these
she's climbing
people.
Mount Everest, right? She's
Yes,
scaling
yes.
a wall.
It can really slow things down. And, the market's, a little different right now than it's been recently. But I think that we should function as efficiently as possible in a down market or a strong market, because the whole flow is important. So yeah, that big picture.
I think it plays, regardless of the market, it's the experience, right? And
yes.
Not that we harp back on it, but really people will talk and they'll make a decision to not come to a company because of some of these fumbles that
yes.
go on to it, right? Unless you can recover really well. I want to throw another piece out there, and it's a hot topic and I only want to spend a minute on it, but where do you throw AI into this stuff, right? And where and what does that play into the whole TA process, whether it's, in any piece of it all?
For me, I think AI is super important. I think we should use AI to help design our job descriptions, because why would we do that from scratch at this point in time? We should use AI to help us design interviewing rubrics and what an ideal candidate looks like. We should use it to train our recruiters when we get a new role. Some people have never heard of Kubernetes or DevOps or whatever, so we should make sure that we schedule in, sit down, and make sure that you understand what you should be looking for and what a good candidate looks like. I think we should be using AI in our ATS when the candidates come through to potentially identify what looks best on a resume, not to knock them out by any means. I'm not a big believer in that at all. I know people won't agree with that, but I'm not a believer in it. But it can flag certain people to be stars, for instance, on paper anyways. And then also any type of automation, like the system should know that you have a second interview coming up. Boom, make sure all those alerts are set up. So automating and all of those workflows and everything you can, templates, frameworks, customizable interviewing sheets, anything like that.
So that's easier probably for bigger companies, but Mara, I know you've worked in nonprofit and some of these small ones. How does the small company that has, an HR person or two, and probably not even a full-time recruiter, but they're doing like, how does that person play into some of these things and that size of a company?
Well, that's an interesting question, because most companies of that size, believe it or not, are not enabled necessarily with AI in any way. They're not necessarily using it other than maybe, hey, I want to write this email. Can you help me make it sound better? And some of these companies I've consulted with didn't have an ATS enabled. So that's actually a difficult question. I don't know.
Like they need it the most, but they're not there yet. So
yes, I think they're definitely not there yet. I think it scares them, because some of the smaller companies, and let's just say like a nonprofit, some of the smaller nonprofits really identify as people powered. We're people powered businesses. We're more philanthropic, or whatever the word is. We care more about philanthropy and people than we do technology. So they're really not enabling it yet. Some of the larger ones are, I'm sure, like Salvation Army and some of the other larger nonprofits. But that's a great question, and I can't answer that one, because I'm not quite sure how, without the proper framework set first, how would you then enable the tools on top of it? It's not.
I mean, just what I would think of this off the cuff side of it is, right? There's free tools that allow you to be more efficient, whether it's scheduling, whether it's reviewing of information that you could do, inexpensively, where you don't
Right.
have to bolt things on and you don't have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to
Yeah.
do that. And I think,
Right.
for them, it's take the shoestring approach of let's make a basic process and then let's fill it in and then grow from there. You don't have to be this big fancy with full out job descriptions and, the right rubrics and the right, I mean, that you got to just go back to the basics on it
Yeah.
and then grow
Yes.
from there.
Yes.
Right.
No,
I will just
agreed.
say I had a role I was a one person team, and I wouldn't have survived without using ChatGPT and other Microsoft Pilot tools to really help write job descriptions and do a lot of the things I didn't have people to do. So I would just
Right.
say there were free versions of almost everything that you
Right.
really can leverage if you want to just explore. I
Right.
think you'll be very surprised about how much time you can gain back to do more valuable things.
And I
Right.
think it's also networking, right? So you network with other professionals. What are they doing? Right? Ask the
Mm-hmm.
questions, and then you take it back and go, how could that apply to me? And then make some quick modifications or implement what
Right.
you
Right.
can, which
Right.
plays into it, which plays into the whole process, which plays into, again, AI is a whole nother world that we can talk about for hours that everybody is, but really in that whole centric process side of things, of what we're looking
Mm-hmm.
at is, make it your own, make it flow, but beg, borrow, and steal you don't have to
Yeah.
rewrite the world on it.
Right.
With that whole aspect of it is that candidate and hiring manager centric type of process, right? So what tips and tricks, or how do you make it that way so it's not stale, it's not stagnant, it's attractive, so the experience is good, but they all feel, warm and fuzzy as they go through this whole process side of things?
I think on the candidate side, um, I think we need to have a concierge or white glove service, no matter what the role is. I honestly, and I'm very adamant about this, and anyone who knows me knows it's true. It doesn't matter to me if I'm recruiting for a CEO or an entry level clerk. It doesn't matter to me. I think they need to be treated with a white glove service, concierge service, and every candidate needs to be treated as if you are going to hire them until you decide you're not. So I think that's super important. So equipping them with everything possible, prepping them properly for every interview, making sure. I saw a post recently about how dare you ask for a job description when you're interviewing? And I'm like, why would I not provide my candidates a job description and give them everything? I want to make my time more useful as well. So everything I can equip a candidate with, not only are they going to appreciate it, not only are they going to think that we're different than everyone else, but they're going to be more prepared. So why would we not want to get a hire with less interviews? So it's not a game. We're not trying to trick people. So definitely we want to equip them with everything we can, always be communicative, of course, and make sure that they have all the information that's above and beyond a simple job description, who the players are, what's in it for them, and all that selling information. And on the flip side of that, which I'm not sure a lot of people do, but when we present a candidate to a hiring manager, again, no matter what the level, let's make sure they understand what they could focus on to really captivate that candidate. Let's make sure we give them that hidden information that's not on a resume, that's not in a simple write-up, things that we know that it's going to be their hot button. This person's super interested in learning Salesforce. So when you're interviewing this candidate, you might want to let them know about our Salesforce training, because that's really going to excite the candidate. And again, that is going to equip that hiring manager with skills and tactics to make his job easier.
Right. I call those little golden nuggets of information that you've dug up, right?
Yes.
So, yeah. What do you do
and
with
once
those?
you've dug them up, you did the work, so why not pass them on? Always.
Absolutely.
And then when you get feedback after the first interview, make sure that you're reporting on both sides the truth. You want to be respectful, but make sure both sides know exactly, what went well and maybe what you're missing or what you need to work on, so that everyone is set up for success through every step.
Yeah, one thing I'm sitting here thinking is there's probably a TA person out there going, oh my gosh, this all sounds great. My company is so broken. The wrong people are driving the process. Like, how do I get started? what's my first step, right? What's my first move? Do you have advice for that person, Mara?
I do, I believe, but I would like first to say if anyone is thinking that, there are thousands of people thinking that
Right.
same thing. I mean,
Right.
even when you think it's so easy and simplify it and really drive the process, it still breaks at times. You get new leaders in, you have layoffs, you have changes in macro markets out there that affect everything we do. So never take it personally. You know, you're never wrong. You just got to always try to improve yourself, no matter personal or business. So I say to that. But I do believe that you need to go to the top. You need to go to the top, somebody who has a vested interest. That could be, depending on the size of the company, obviously it can't be the CEO of a Fortune 10, but let's just say you're working for, like I mentioned, a smaller nonprofit. You should be able to connect with the CEO or the VPs or the top leaders of the company and say, you know, I have some ideas that are going to help everyone in the company really get some time back. Let's give you more time to focus on what you're making money on, because nonprofits do make money, by the way, and really give them those tools and have that conversation. And so I think your first thing is go to the top and try to explain to them how some simple changes, some best practices that we all read about could actually help the company grow, make more money, and be more efficient. That would be
Right.
my very first step.
Yeah, I think that's wise advice. And I think when you take that approach, you really have to think, who's the audience? What do they want to hear? What do I need to be armed with? Can I bring some data or analytics to that meeting, right?
Yes.
Depending, just to be
Yes.
prepared for how that conversation goes. Because that's kind of, if you're asking for time with a C-suite person, no matter what size the company is, I think having that
Absolutely.
data is an
Absolutely.
important step. Yeah.
And definitely you can always present the wins and maybe the not so great wins as well. Like you might
Mhm.
present some data on this position took 4 months. This position took 30 days. What
Right.
would you prefer your
Yep.
company? What zone would you prefer your
Yeah.
company in? And
And
really
here's the
present it
process
visually.
map that went with position
Yeah.
A, and here's the process map that went with position B, right?
Yes. Yes. And then having the external data helps as well, because none of us are experts, really. We think we're experts, but we're all feeding off of each other and learning from each other. Hence this podcast. We're going to learn from each other. We're going to take something away. So make sure you have some external support as well, external data of what other people feel and think and have proven to be good tactics.
Right. One of the things we like to do on our podcast, Mara, is share a tale from the trench. And I have a tale I want to share here because I'm sure there's somebody out there like me. I was in a very high growth organization that really didn't have a good handle. We were just trying to build up a talent acquisition function. And the problem really became leadership in that company. And the number of steps, the number of people at very high levels they wanted it involved in interviews. And it was really killing the process. So in that example, as a leader in human resources, I really looked at it and said, the only way to still, hit the targets and achieve this and go through all these steps is to kind of force this panel process and kind of block time and come up with a strategy given the growth that we're allocating certain blocks of time each week to interviews and kind of getting that buy-in. So it's a small example, it's a small story, but just taking that one first step from top HR leader to kind of top engineering leader where all the growth was and getting that commitment really kind of moved the needle.
Oh, I could just imagine.
Right. And then, we kind of came to decisions much more quickly. We all had the same perspective on the candidate. I think there was a lot of additional synergies gained just through even learning in the organization about who cares about what for some of these positions, right? Like you said, the different stakeholders, put them in the same room and have a conversation on the candidate. At the end of the day, when you do that and you take that approach, you're actually, saving the candidate's time. You're also making the decision process easier, right? At the end, you're kind of doing that calibration process that sometimes is difficult at the end when there's multiple stakeholders. So
Yes.
It's just a small story, but it was one step that I was able to take in that organization that I saw had a huge impact. And sometimes you just have to break things down and say, I can't get to perfect overnight. I have dysfunction. How do I just keep moving the needle in the right direction and kind of go after your biggest bang for the buck, so to speak?
Yeah, I love that. That's a great story. And I love that you said um, well, you didn't say it this way, but basically small, subtle changes can really move the needle. I think sometimes when we do that, we step in, not not in these cases, but sometimes you can get a new TA leader come in and say, this is the way we're doing it. This is how we're doing it. This is how I did it at my last companies. This is how we're going to do it moving forward. And doing that and implementing a huge change without understanding the business and not without understanding why things are done a certain way, without understanding what has been working, what hasn't been working, I think is a disaster. It can be a disaster because it could disrupt the business dramatically. But
Yeah,
like
I
what
call
you
it
said,
copy
if you,
paste leadership. What worked for me somewhere else is going to work here, right? Which is we
yes,
all know is not true.
it's
So,
not true. But I love that you said, just moving the needle, just taking steps to move the needle. Because if you move the needle, I don't know how many minutes, like seconds or a minute, 60 times, then you
mm,
just made huge progress.
right,
And any progress is better than staying stagnant. So
right.
even if
And
it's
it,
that little teeny bit.
yeah, in that example, it was really kind of a culture shift as well, right? And it accomplished multiple things. But I think it's a good example to share because I think a lot of people out there kind of struggle with how do I do all of this at once? And I just want to
Yeah.
illustrate sometimes a small step can make a big difference. So,
Yes, absolutely.
Joe,
So
you've
I'm
got to
sitting
have a
here
story.
smiling because I was gonna segue like this, Jill, and literally had a conversation with somebody recently, and they're struggling with, how do I get everything done? The process is the process. We aren't using the technology the way we probably could or should, and it's frustrating. And I'm like, well, you got to take us. So if you can't, if if you've had some conversations with leadership and it's not changing, well, then make your own changes, right? Step back and go, what is my process now? What is happening for me? Here's my
Good point.
outliers. Here's my pieces. What could I automate myself, right? How do I be efficient that way? What's going to fall? What won't fall? And then you take those, self reflection, and then you can take that to your leader and go, listen, here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm doing. I could do A or B. What would you rather do? And with the A or B, this is going to happen on either side of those, right? And to move forward. So you're helping push things along because you're coming up with other creative things to get more efficient and get things done, but you're also not taxing everybody else and not being a complainer either because you're just solving it. You're doing it yourself. And that was my point is, listen, you can't be complaining. You can't be that way. Take it yourself. Be a self person and leader and go, right? And
Yes.
shows great initiative. It shows other ideas. It may then spark that person to be able to then keep moving it forward. And it was,
Right.
I don't have the results yet of that because it was a little, it takes time to implement certain pieces and do that self reflection. But
Right.
it was at least going, okay, you know what? I'll do it myself, right? And that person isn't the TA manager or TA director, right? They're a recruiter, and
Hmm.
themselves can then move things forward. So that works for anybody at any company and any size,
Absolutely.
you know, and you do that part of it, and I've said this before in another episode, every so often, as a leader, as a person, you've got to step up above the forest and look at everything and go, what's happening, what's working, what's not working, and then go back into the weeds and go solve the problems and keep moving forward. And that's kind of what my suggestion was. And that's for everything. And in my opinion, for these stories on this type of topic, you got to stop and pause,
Hmm.
and sometimes you don't change anything. Sometimes you do make slight changes. And you're right, Jill. I mean, making those little incremental pieces is huge. And then
Hmm.
advertising it, right? And
Hmm.
I've done that before. Hey, listen, we did this, and this is now happening, right? You got to showcase some of those wins to be
Hmm.
able to, because a lot of people are like, oh, you didn't do anything, nothing's changing, whatever it is. No, no, no. Yes, it is. It's just you don't see a lot of it because it's not a big bang in that aspect.
Right.
Right.
Right. No, I completely agree with that. I think that's a great point. And I think, additional parts of that is we always need to prove ourselves that we know what we're talking about. We know that there can be improvements. We know that there are these steps that we can take. And if you don't have executive buy-in and your hiring managers aren't necessarily jumping on board, a great tactic, back to what can I do if things are broken, just prove it. Just deliver differently. Just be the best recruiter you can be, and trust me, they will follow. They will absolutely say, wow, you found me 3 people so quickly. I wasn't ready for that. Well,
results by
let's
a
go.
lot
Yes.
of credibility. So
absolutely, absolutely. So just because the whole organization isn't going to change doesn't mean you can't bring change through action. And
And then your
always
peers
remember
will
that.
do it, your leaders will do it. It'll
Yes.
get contagious into those little things.
Yes.
It doesn't always have to go big bang at the top. So
Yeah, and I think part of like when you design process, everything is so process, everything is so heavy. Everything is so embedded with extra workflows. Sometimes you just need to do the job really well and then design it around that. You know, you don't necessarily have to say, here's the new process. Let me show you the new process by making a few people happy that then say, hey, I want Mara working on my roles. That's your goal, is you want to do it that
trick
way.
them. You've got to use trickery.
Do it every day.
been there, done
Every
that.
day. Yeah, you should strive for that. But my Tales from the Trenches story, I'll just do it very quickly, is talk about a subtle change. I was with a company once, this was a while back, that was spending over $1 million a year on agency fees, and really were it was high volume, but it was tech, and they couldn't quite figure it out. Like, what are we doing wrong? And one simple change I made when I joined was having the recruiter-led interview process, really just by me interviewing and noting everything up front. What they were doing before was people were sending resumes, including the internal recruiters, to the hiring managers. They would pick who they would want to interview, and then you would put those candidates through the process, and then HR and recruiting would step in and go through salary and go through and then they would say, nope, this person's out. So all that time was wasted. So then you have to go yet to another agency and find a whole new batch of candidates.
Oh, there's a lot of people out there going, oh my God, my company does that, right?
Yes. So a very simple thing, have the recruiter cleared up front, because a recruiter's not going to present someone that's way outside of your boundaries. They just shouldn't do that. So why are we spending time interviewing people that we know we might not be able to get?
Absolutely.
So that's one of my tales. And I'm not kidding you. We eliminated all agency spending within 1 year, every dime of it, and filled all the roles just by just those subtle changes. We didn't have to design a process or go through training.
You just kind of completely flipped the process and
flipped it
and saved $1 million. So
yes, yeah, it was phenomenal. It was a great win.
Pretty awesome, pretty powerful stuff.
Yes,
how about you, Joe?
Yes.
You have any closing remarks you'd like to make, Joe?
Yeah, no, I just think ultimately everyone just has to the process is going to work for them, for their company. I think you don't need to over engineer it, right? You need to make it simple but smart and common sense. I mean, that's what go back to common sense and basic pieces of it all, and bring in your HR team, have the cohesive discussions, and really just evolve it to what it needs to be. And it will change, and that's what everyone has to understand. What you make today won't be what it is in 3, 6, 12 months, and that's okay.
It's dynamic.
As long as it's consistent in that process, as we all know, for compliance and all the other stuff. And HR and legal is thanking me right now, but but it's going to evolve because the business evolves, right? The candidates evolve, the technology evolves, and we've got to be continuing to be flexible and agile, and whatever term you want to use, to keep doing that. But it's keeping the eye on the ball is the candidate experience, the hiring manager experience, finding great talent, and communicating across. And I mean, Jill, that just kind of knocked out 4 of our podcasts right there, but it really flows all together into those things. And I just think, people get afraid of it and go, I got to design this thing and it's got to look pretty and it's got to have this whole document and you got to have all these PowerPoints. It really just goes back to basics and keep your eye on the ball and provide that good experience.
Agreed. 1,000%. 1,000%.
Jill?
Well, I first of all want to thank you, Mara, for joining us. I know
Thank
you're
you.
far away in sunny California, so thanks for joining our podcast today. It was great to have this conversation, and I think there's a lot of takeaways for a lot of our listeners out there.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so proud of you guys for putting this together, and I cannot wait to see everything go live.
Mara, it's always a pleasure,
Thank you.
from our time working and chatting and discussing. So I appreciate your insights and your knowledge and your support. And it's been an absolute pleasure. And Jill, as always, it's always fun, our discussion. So, Mara, did you have any other final comments on your side?
No, well, actually, I do. I think I would just like to say that when you talk about a scalable process, you can't scale an overly engineered, clunky process. So just keep that in mind. When you want to scale, keep it down to the minimal, perfect that, and then as you grow, you can add some things. That's how you scale. You can't scale if you're already scaled. So don't make it too heavy. Just keep it simple and add where you need it.
Awesome.
I love it.
Words for wisdom, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Talent Revolution, Tales from the Trenches. Follow, like, subscribe, and we appreciate you listening and sharing with your friends. Until next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.